Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and only jimmydore.com. We have special guests with us, Danny Haiphong, an independent journalist, geopolitical analyst. He's the host of his YouTube Rumble show under his own name, Danny Haiphong. He covers developments in the struggle between U.S.-led unipolar world and the emerging multipolar world. He's a co-author of American Exceptionalism and American Innocence, of People's History of Fake News. Please welcome back to the show, Danny Haiphong. Hey, Danny.
Hi, Jimmy. Good to be back with you.
Good to see you. Do we have... no, right? Yeah, no. No. So that's other. Okay. So we're going to jump right into this. So the great social media. So they're getting ready. They're banning TikTok, which I think is going to go into effect this Sunday. And so this is from CNN Business. The great social media migration, sudden influx of users, United States users, to a thing called RedNote that connects the Chinese and the Americans like never before. A Supreme Court justice as they ponder the future of TikTok, a growing number of American social media users have responded by moving to an unlikely alternative. How do you say that, Danny?
What? Oh, Little Red Book. Xiaohongshu.
Okay, Xiaohongshu. Okay, that's a hugely popular social media app in China. The app, which means Little Red Book, often shortened by U.S. users to RedNote, surged at the top 10 positions on Apple's U.S. App Store. That happened on Tuesday. It was founded in 2013. It's one of China's biggest social media platforms with 300 million users. It's described as China's answer to Instagram. It's become especially popular for sharing tips on travel, makeup, fashion. It's surging in popularity worldwide the same week that TikTok is potentially going down. By the way, we're on there, the Jimmy Dore Show. You can go Jimmy Dore Comedy, and it'll come up. So we're on there because they kicked us off TikTok again. So
wait. So you're allowed on the more Chinese one?
So that's the irony, is that
that's amazing.
I'm allowed to go on the one that's actually Chinese social media app, but I'm not allowed on the TikTok one. Okay, so here we go. More than 700,000 new users have joined. Wednesday, the hashtag TikTok refugee garnered 250 million views and 5.5 million comments. Many of the American users they had joined as an act of defiance against Washington's move on TikTok. Yeah, I did. This is so much better than TikTok, somebody claimed. Americans are coming here. So sorry you'll hate us, but I promise we'll do our best. The sudden migration of U.S. users to this Red Book has created an unlikely platform for Chinese and American users to interact with each other. That's the thing, right? Most Chinese users have warmly welcomed the newcomers, with some even sharing video tutorials to help the new TikTok refugees navigate the app. So it looks like this could be a big historic moment. Users are finding creative ways to transcend language barriers, navigate cultural differences, and coexist in fascinating ways. This community building happening in real time. So we've been fed a lot of propaganda, Danny. You know this in the United States. We've been fed propaganda that says Chinese are all communists and evil, and they don't respect rights, or so they're just like what I was taught as a kid about Russians, right? And they're saying it about Russians again, by the way. So when people are finding out is that, oh my God, Chinese people are just like us. They have the same wants and needs and desires. They have the same familiar needs. Also, their lives are way better than we've been taught in the United States by our propaganda and our government for China. So let me just give you a chance. Go ahead and respond to that.
Sure. Well, I don't want to say it, but I will say it. I mean, I told you so to those who were questioning me. I mean, I've been to China 4 times in the last 5 years, and everything that people are saying on Red Book right now, Jimmy, is what people say to me when I've been in China, whether it's in Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region, the most propagandized region that the United States targets to try to label China this human rights catastrophe, or whether it's Beijing and Shanghai, the biggest cities in China. They say the same things. They say that they are building their own system. They're building a system that works for them. And they are actually shocked, just like Chinese users on Xiaohongshu are shocked when Americans tell them the things that they are going through about healthcare debt, about how much an ambulance costs, about how it's so difficult to buy a home, to even afford rent. This is shocking to them because they don't assume that the United States is going to be like this. And they assume that what happens in China should be just ordinarily what happens in the United States, because in China, you can take a high-speed rail train. We don't have that in the United States. In China, you're not going to go bankrupt if you need an ambulance. In China, if you want to take the subway, you're going to take a clean, a fast subway, and it costs, even in the most expensive city in China, in Shanghai, it's going to cost you 50 cents per trip, no matter how far you go. So that is just, it's always been the reality. But the really striking thing about this, Jimmy, is that Xiaohongshu has basically done what a lot of my work I've been attempting to do over the years has helped facilitate Americans' knowledge, and it's breaking through the propaganda barrier that the U.S. government has tried to impose on us in order to fuel a Cold War against China, all because the United States wants to take away our right. The government wants to take away our rights to use TikTok, which is a huge disaster for the United States, for the economy, for people's rights. In China, the ironic thing, Jimmy, is that in China, the U.S. TikTok, what you can use in the U.S. and Europe and the West, is not. You're not able to use that in China because they don't want that version of TikTok. They have Douyin and they have Xiaohongshu. They have other alternatives that they regulate, that they use for themselves, that are wildly popular, and they don't view TikTok as necessary for their people and their society. And so this is what's so ironic, is that TikTok is being banned in the United States, and people are mass migrating to a Chinese app, the one that you can use a US number for. And people in the United States are learning about China in the same way that I've learned about China, by going there, by seeing it, by traveling from east to west, north to south, and seeing what people are doing there to build a better society, a more prosperous society, and one that respects international law, multipolarity, and peace. It has its own problems, it has its own contradictions, but China says that they're going to address those for themselves, and they're going to do that without U.S. interference. And that is really all you can ask for in this moment when the United States is going scorched earth all around the world.
So now, if someone said, hey, what are the problems of the United States? I would say the unbelievable explosion of income inequality, the capture of governments by corporations and billionaires, the lack of actual democracy, the imposition of oligarchy, people's inability to access healthcare in a way that doesn't bankrupt them, people's inability to keep up with inflation, the high housing costs, the high costs of education. People are basically in debt and serfs now, and it's really we have bigger income inequality since. We got to go back to the times of the pharaohs. So there's a real this to me is the situation that you would find when a revolution happens. Now, that's what I would say the problems in the United States, which they're huge, right? We still won't give people health care, and we see our infrastructure falling apart when a fire happens in Los Angeles, in a place that they have fires all the time, and they're not ready for them. It took 45 minutes for a fire truck to get to the Pacific Palisades when that fire broke out. So what would you say is the problems? I mean, that's what two parties, right? So we have two parties in America, but it's really one party. It's the oligarchy party, right? It's the money party. So we have the illusion of democracy, we have the illusion of choice, and we have the illusion of two parties. What would they only have one party in China? What would be the problems?
Well, I'll just name three because I think it's so interesting. Oftentimes when you say anything good about China, you're called an agent of the CPC, that you never criticize China. But really, you can just look at how the Chinese government talks about China and see that they also talk about problems, even in the state media. And you can clearly, and when you go to China, people will talk about this, there are three critical problems that China is trying to address right now. One is corruption. There's a huge anti-corruption campaign within the Communist Party of China right now. There have been thousands upon thousands of arrests, of clamping down on those that have taken bribes, that have gotten rich, that have done bad by people in order to advance themselves wherever they are in China under the banner of the party. So that is happening, and that has been very successful, but it continues to happen because it continues to be a problem. That is something that is very difficult to completely eliminate. Number two, they
Well,
also have income inequality in China.
Can I just see in America here that almost never happens, right? You get Joe Biden giving people blanket pardons. You get Nancy Pelosi, who's obviously doing insider trading, and they pass laws that make that stuff legal. So you actually have less corruption, it seems, in China than you do in the United States. To me, just from an outsider.
100%. The anti-corruption campaign works, Jimmy. There have been so many bankers, so many party members, so many people that have violated the laws, the rules, the codes of what it means to follow the rule of law in China and to serve the people. Those folks have been brought to justice. Of course, there's still many out there still in China that they are trying to clamp down on, but it still has happened. And so when we get to this next problem, income inequality, China got really, really, really rich really, really, really fast. And they did it by opening up their economy. That led to a certain level of inequality between those that benefited the most and those that benefited less. Everyone's standard of living, just look at the graphs, look at what the UN says about poverty alleviation, look at the income graphs. You can see that everyone in China over the last 40 years has had their standard of living increase, but it has not been equal, of course. And so right now, China is trying to address common prosperity. They are trying to address the problem of what it means to have rich people that have more money, maybe more wealth than those who do not. And that is the second problem. The third problem, of course, that many people know about is the environment. Massive industrialization, rapid industrialization led to pollution, smog, and difficult living conditions in some of the biggest and most industrialized cities. That problem is quickly becoming one that is close to being solved because of China's massive investments. I mean, I know you're in California, Jimmy. I know they talk a lot about renewable energy there. I'm on the East Coast, where we're in the coastal parts of the United States. They talk a lot about renewable energy, solar panels, windmills, those kind of things. In China, they invest so much in this to the point where 100% of the buses are electric, 70% of the cars are electric, 47,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, and pollution has reduced dramatically to the point where you have former diplomats like Eric Solheim, for example, who can go to China now. He's been traveling to China for decades. He says, in 1990s, he couldn't run in Beijing without a mask and without, feeling like he was going to collapse from the pollution. Now the skies are blue and the air is much more clean to breathe because of this investment. So China has that problem still, though, because they're still a massively industrializing country that uses a lot of coal. So these are the issues that China, just three of them, that China still is needing to address. But the difference, Jimmy, and I think this is what people are learning on Little Red Book, Xiaoheng Shu, is that they are addressing it. They are actually attempting to resolve problems that are massively difficult to address in a world situation that we find ourselves in.
So is there a homeless problem in China?
Well, Jimmy, in China, there are people who, it's a much different kind of society. So if people know the layout of China and its history, they know it used to be one of the poorest countries in the world, and most of the population was rural. So most people lived in the countryside. Most people lived on their land. When industrialization happened, a lot of people moved into the cities to work. The United States corporate media loves to propagandize that, these people are just, they're just moving to the cities, being forced there and forced to work. No. People wanted to go there to the cities because they wanted to make more money, because you can make more money working in a factory than you can selling crops in the countryside. So when that happened, there was, of course, an imbalance. China had to create a housing system called Hoku. And what China did, though, was they ensured that people who came from the countryside always had their land. They never took away their land. They never said, you can't have your land anymore. The land, especially in the rural areas, is people's property. So people always have a place to go back to. China's homeless problem is very, very small. And to someone from the United States, it probably looks like zero. Why? Because China does not believe in the idea of sleeping rough, like they say in the UK or in the United States, people who sleep outside, street homeless. You will not find that in China because China does have a relatively robust social services system, and they encourage people who are migrating from the rural areas into the cities, either one, to canteen with factories, which is a very common thing. A lot of Chinese factories will put people up for their jobs, or they encourage people to travel back and travel back to the countryside during Spring Festival, during the off seasons when they're not working in the cities, and to live in the countryside. But until they can, this is another problem I didn't talk about, Jimmy, until there is an even level of development between the rural areas and the urban areas, a very difficult task, but one that is China is very committed to. That problem will not 100% go away. But truthfully, there is not a homelessness problem in China. It is something that exists, but it's very small. It's nothing to the level of the United States. What was the increase this year, Jimmy? 24%, 18%? I forget what the number is. Something astronomical in the last year alone. Homelessness rose under the Biden administration. Every year under the Biden administration, it has risen. That is something that would be unacceptable in China. If the homelessness problem was going up, 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 up every single year, Xi Jinping, all the way down to the lowest levels of government, their heads would be rolling. They would not be in power anymore. That is just something that isn't acceptable. People in China, when I go there, they are shocked. They ask me, it's like, this is very scary that you have people sleeping outside. Very scary that you have people who have nothing, no help, no assistance, that they're struggling with their mental health. Nobody's trying to help them. There's no resources. That's something that is very shocking, I think, in China. And Xiao Hangshu, again, is showing that. I think we're probably going to see a lot of videos come up on that platform from Americans, and Chinese users be very shocked.
Well, that was the thing that I remember one of the first times we talked. I was saying this one party rule, it's got to be horrible, and one party rule. Of course, we have the same thing here in the United States, basically, and it's oligarchy rule, and the both parties agree on the most horrible of things. But you pointed out to me that if there's a problem, now you know who to blame. In America, they're doing it right now at the LA fires, right? That Jen Psaki's doing videos on MSNBC and blaming Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And meanwhile, it's the Governor Newsom and Karen Bass who are in charge. And then we have people going on talk shows saying it's not their fault. They're doing a great job. It's not so. But in China, there's only one party to blame. And so consequently, people do get held accountable for things and heads do roll, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, even during COVID, right? Before we knew what COVID-19, all of that was, during the initial period in Wuhan, a lot of local officials were sacked, not because they necessarily did something terribly wrong, but because something went wrong, and during that early novel coronavirus period, and they immediately took action and said, well, your leadership wasn't quick enough, you didn't respond quick enough, you're gone. And this is something that happens all the time, especially at the local level, because this is where corruption in China, the anti-corruption campaign, really hones in on, because it's much easier than at the central government level, at the higher levels of government, provincial, etc. It's a lot easier to check people than at the very lowest level, where perhaps you are a single person or maybe a few people who's in charge of a village or maybe a township or whatever it is. It's a lot easier to do corruption there than it is at the highest levels, where you have to abide by stricter rules, and you have far more people looking over your shoulder saying, hey, what's going on, if things don't go right, especially when you deal with bigger policies rather than just implementing them. And you're creating them at the higher level. So that's where a lot of the heads roll, actually, in the local level, because it's much easier to be corrupt at that level in China. And that's what most people will talk about when they talk about corruption. But still, this corruption doesn't reach the level. And I'm glad that you talked about the two-party system, Jimmy, because a lot of people who worship the two-party system in the United States, who are Democrat, Republican, this is the best way, this is the best system, they don't even they love their choices, but then they don't even champion, well, what about the European systems? Don't you love them? They're parliamentary. They have, some of them even have 4 or 5 6. Look at Germany. Germany's full of parties, and they seem to be collapsing too. But in the United States, you have 2 parties, as you said, one oligarchy controlling it. In China, people assume that because you have one party, you essentially have an oligarchy controlling it. But really, that one party has a hugely robust system that allows for a lot of top-down and bottom-up communication, which is why it works so efficiently. Because if you didn't have quick decision-making at the top and the ability for people at the bottom to have their say and give their service to the government, understand what it is, and give their contributions, then that system wouldn't work. That system would not be as efficient. China would not be able to alleviate poverty. China would not be able to make quick decisions when needed. They wouldn't be able to industrialize so fast. You need that both top-down and bottom-up communication, people talking to each other, giving recommendations at the bottom, even voting at the village level, at the municipal level. And then you need people at the top who are chosen from the bottom levels to then implement policy that reflects the interests of the people. But if China had a party, if the Communist Party of China began to act like the United States' political system, the Communist Party of China would be no more. So we have to understand that Chinese people are very, very, very involved. They're very opinionated. If they are not getting what they want, we've seen this at the local level over and over and over again. If they're not getting what they want or that they need, there's going to be new leadership there. And that's what makes the party so flexible. It's why it's been so resilient. And it's why the United States can't stand it, because the United States wants to overthrow it. The United States doesn't want a government that can be this efficient, that can grow in this way, and that can compete, because that means the United States will have to compete itself. And you see what's happening here, Jimmy. The United States economy is in shambles. The two-party system is utterly corrupt, and the United States is on a precipitous decline.
Hey, if you can't remember the last time you slept all night or didn't feel stressed during the day, you need to hear about CBD from CB Distillery. They've got natural solutions for sleep and stress that people can't stop raving about. Check out some of their 48,000 five-star reviews. Quote, the best sleep I've ever gotten in years. Quote, I wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go. And it's not just sleep. They have plant-based solutions to help with stress, mood, and focus, even pain after exercise, all made with high-quality, clean ingredients. There's, I got to say, if I have to have a favorite product of theirs, there's a CBD cream I use, and I'm not going to tell you where I use it. Look, there's a lot of CBD out there, but I trust CB Distillery for their commitment to quality. That's why they have over 2 million satisfied customers and over 100% money-back guarantee. If you're still struggling with sleep, stress, or other health concerns, maybe it's time to try something different. CBD from CB Distillery. And I have a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com and use code Jimmy for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, code Jimmy, cbdistillery.com. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.